Captain Sarah Steele Morrison adjusted her helmet and peered through the gunner's sight of her M1A2 Abrams tank. The Ukrainian countryside stretched before her, scarred by months of brutal warfare. It was the 15th of March, 2024, and the 3rd Armored Division had been tasked with breaking through Russian defensive lines near the contested city of Bakhmut. Sarah had earned her nickname Steel, not just for commanding one of the most advanced tanks in the world, but for her unwavering determination under fire. At 28, she was the youngest female tank commander in her battalion, having worked her way up from loader to commander through sheer skill and an almost supernatural ability to remain calm in chaos. The morning mist clung to the destroyed buildings like ghosts of the lives that once filled them. Sarah's tank, call sign Phantom 6, led a column of 4 Abrams tanks moving toward their objective, a strategic hill overlooking the main supply route that Russian forces had been using to reinforce their positions. Phantom 6, this is Overwatch. We've got enemy armor movement 2 clicks northeast of your position. Looks like 3 T-92nd and infantry support, crackled the radio voice of Major Collins, their battalion commander. Sarah keyed her radio. Copy. Overwatch. Phantom 6 engaging. All Phantom elements, spread formation. Watch for anti-tank teams in the tree line. Her crew had been together for 8 months. Sergeant Mike Bulldog Rodriguez served as her gunner, a veteran with an uncanny ability to hit targets at impossible distances. Corporal Lisa Tech Washington handled the loader position with lightning speed, while Private Jake Rookie Peterson drove with a skill that belied his 19 years. Steel, I've got visual on the lead 90, Rodriguez reported, his eye pressed to the gunner's primary sight, range 2,400 meters. Load Sabot, Sarah ordered. Sabot up, Washington confirmed, the 120mm depleted uranium round sliding into the breach with a metallic clang. Fire when ready. The Abrams shuddered as the main gun discharged, sending a kinetic energy penetrator screaming across the battlefield at over a mile per second. Through her commander's sight, Sarah watched the Russian tank's turret lift off its hull in a spectacular explosion. Target destroyed. Traverse left. Next target, she commanded. But as Rodriguez swung the turret, Sarah noticed something that made her blood run cold. 3 small dots were approaching from the north, fast and low. Air contact! Enemy aircraft inbound! She shouted into the radio. All Phantom elements button up and take evasive action. The Su-25 Frogfoot ground attack aircraft came in like angry hornets, their twin engines screaming as they dove toward the American armor. The lead aircraft opened fire with its 30mm cannon, stitching a line of explosions toward Phantom 2. Phantom 2 is hit, came the panicked voice over the radio. We're immobilized but still fighting. Sarah watched in horror as the second Su-25 lined up for another attack run. Her tank's 50 caliber machine gun and coaxial 7.62mm were useless against fast-moving aircraft. They were designed to fight other tanks, not jets. Overwatch, this is Phantom 6. We need immediate air support. Enemy CAS is tearing us apart. Phantom 6, nearest friendly air is 15 minutes out. You need to hold position until... Major Collins' transmission was cut short as a rocket from the 3rd Su-25 impacted just 50 meters from Sarah's tank, showering them with debris and filling the compartment with smoke. Steel, what do we do? Peterson's voice was tight with fear. Sarah's mind raced. In 15 minutes, her entire column could be destroyed. She thought about her crew, about the other tankers counting on her, about the mission that dozens of soldiers had already died to accomplish. Then she remembered something from her training at Fort Knox. During a demonstration, an instructor had mentioned that in World War II, a few tank crews had successfully engaged aircraft with their main guns. The instructor had called it desperate tactics for desperate times. Rodriguez, can you track that lead aircraft? Steel, you can't be serious. That thing's doing over 400 knots. Can you track it or not? Rodriguez studied the aircraft's flight pattern as it banked for another attack run. Maybe, if I lead it enough and time the shot perfectly. But the odds are... Forget the odds. Washington, load he. High explosive up. Sarah opened her hatch and stood up in the commander's position, ignoring the bullets and shrapnel flying around her. She needed to see this shot herself. The Su-25 was coming straight at them, its cannon already flashing. Distance, 1,800 meters, and closing fast, she called down to Rodriguez. He's committed to his attack run, won't be able to maneuver much. Steel, get down! Washington shouted as cannon rounds walked toward their position. Steady, Rodriguez. Let him come closer. 1,400 meters. 1,200. Steel, we need to shoot now. Wait. The Su-25's rockets ignited, 2 heat-seeking missiles dropping from its wings. Sarah could see the pilot's helmet in the cockpit, could almost feel his concentration as he lined up for the kill shot. 1,000 meters. Steel. Fire. The 120mm gun roared, sending a high-explosive shell arcing through the sky at nearly 3,000 feet per second. Sarah watched through her binoculars as the projectile traced a perfect parabolic path through the morning air. For a moment that seemed to last forever, the Su-25 continued its attack run, missiles streaking toward Phantom 6. Then, the impossible happened. The high-explosive shell, timed to detonate at a specific altitude, exploded directly in the path of the diving aircraft. The Su-25 flew straight into the expanding ball of fire and steel fragments at 400 knots. The aircraft disintegrated instantly. One wing cartwheeled away while the fuselage, trailing flame and smoke, crashed into the forest beyond the battlefield. The pilot never had a chance to eject. Holy shit. Steel, did we just... Peterson's voice was filled with disbelief. Phantom 6, confirm your last transmission. Did you just engage an aircraft with your main gun? Major Collins' voice cut through the radio chatter. Sarah dropped back into the commander's hatch, her hands shaking slightly from adrenaline. Affirmative, Overwatch. One Su-25 destroyed by tank main gun. Silence filled the radio for several seconds before Collins responded. Well, I'll be damned. Phantom 6. That's the first confirmed air-to-air kill by a tank crew since World War II. But Sarah wasn't celebrating yet. The other two Su-25 were still out there, and now they were angry. All Phantom elements. The remaining aircraft will be back. Washington, keep loading H.E. Rodriguez. You think you can do that again? Steel. That was 1 in a million shot. I don't think... Rodriguez, I need you to believe you can do it. Those pilots just watched their wingman get blown out of the sky by a tank. They're going to be cautious now. Maybe predictable. As if summoned by her words, the two remaining Su-25 appeared on the horizon, approaching more carefully this time. They had spread out, making coordinated attacks from different directions. Phantom 3, Phantom 4, concentrate fire on the eastern aircraft with your machine guns. Try to force him to break off his attack. We'll take the western one. Sarah watched the tactical situation develop. The Russians were good. They were using the classic pincer attack, forcing her to choose which threat to engage, while the other would have a free shot. But Sarah had noticed something. The western aircraft was flying a predictable pattern, using a small hill as cover between attack runs. If she could time it right. Rodriguez, traverse right. I want you aimed at that gap between the hills where he's been appearing. Steel, he's not even there yet. Trust me. Load he. Lead the target by. Make it 400 mils. The seconds stretched out. Sarah could hear the distant roar of jet engines, could see the eastern Su-25 diving toward Phantom 3. Machine gun tracers lit up the sky as her fellow tankers desperately tried to drive off the attack. Then the western Su-25 appeared exactly where Sarah had predicted, rising over the hill to begin its attack run. Target, fire. Once again, the Abrams main gun thundered. This time, Sarah watched a second Su-25 fly directly into an airburst explosion. The aircraft's nose pitched down violently, and it crashed into the hillside in a massive fireball. The final Su-25, perhaps realizing that these weren't ordinary tankers, broke off its attack and fled toward Russian lines. Overwatch. This is Phantom 6. 2 enemy aircraft destroyed, 1 driven off. Phantom column is secure and continuing mission. Phantom 6. Major Collins' voice carried a note of awe. I don't know what they're going to call this in the history books, but I'm putting you and your crew in for the Distinguished Service Cross. Hell, maybe the Medal of Honor. As Phantom 6 resumed its advance toward the objective, Sarah felt a mixture of pride and soberness. She had just achieved something that military historians would debate for decades. A tank crew shooting down not 1, but 2 fighter aircraft in aerial combat. Steel, Rodriguez said quietly, in all my years as a gunner, I never thought I'd be shooting at jets. Rodriguez, in all my years as a tank commander, I never thought I'd have a gunner good enough to hit them. The battle for the hill continued for 3 more hours. Russian T-92nd and BMP infantry fighting vehicles threw everything they had at the advancing American armor. But Sarah's incredible opening shots had broken the enemy's confidence and eliminated their air support. By evening, Phantom 6 sat atop Hill 247, overlooking the strategic supply route. Russian convoys would no longer be able to reinforce their positions without coming under direct fire from American tanks. 3 weeks later, Sarah stood in the Pentagon briefing room, facing a panel of generals and DoD officials. The story of the Steel Angel of Bakhmut had spread throughout the military, and someone had leaked it to the press. Video footage from drone reconnaissance had confirmed the impossible, clear imagery of tank shells destroying aircraft in flight. Captain Morrison, General Patricia Hayes began. Your actions on the 15th of March represent one of the most extraordinary examples of tactical innovation and marksmanship in modern warfare. However, we need to understand exactly how this was accomplished, so we can incorporate these tactics into our training doctrine. Sarah stepped forward. Ma'am, It was a combination of factors. First, we had excellent intelligence on the enemy flight patterns from our reconnaissance assets. Second, Sergeant Rodriguez demonstrated exceptional gunnery skills. Third, we used high explosive shells with timed detonation, creating an airburst effect. But Captain, interrupted General Williamstone, the mathematical probability of hitting a fast-moving aircraft with a tank gun is virtually zero. How do you account for your success? Sarah smiled slightly. Sir, sometimes you don't calculate the odds. Sometimes you just trust your training, trust your crew, and do what needs to be done. The enemy aircraft were committed to their attack runs, which made them predictable. We simply put our shells where they were going to be, not where they were. And you did this twice? Yes, sir. The second aircraft made the mistake of using the same flight path as the first. In tank warfare, predictability gets you killed. General Hayes leaned forward. Captain, we're going to be studying your actions for years. You've potentially revolutionized ground-based air defense tactics. What do you want to do next? Sarah thought about her crew. Rodriguez with his steady hands and sharp eyes. Washington with her lightning-fast loading. Peterson with his skilled driving that had kept them alive through countless engagements. She thought about the other tankers still fighting, still facing impossible odds every day. Ma'am, I want to go back to my tank and my crew. There's still a war to fight, and Phantom 6 isn't finished yet. 6 months later, the conflict had ended with a negotiated ceasefire. Sarah Morrison returned home to Fort Knox, where she was assigned as an instructor at the armor school. Her first lesson to new tank commanders always began the same way. Ladies and gentlemen, you're about to learn that a tank is more than just armor and firepower. It's a weapon system limited only by the imagination and courage of its crew. Today, we're going to talk about the day we discovered that tanks can shoot down fighter jets. The official military history would record that on the 15th of March, 2024, near Bakhmut, Ukraine, Captain Sarah Morrison's M1A2 Abrams tank achieved the first and second air-to-air kills by a main battle tank in modern warfare. The feat was replicated only twice more during the conflict, both times by crews trained in the Morrison Method. But for Sarah, the real victory wasn't the medals or the recognition. It was the knowledge that when her crew needed her most, when the impossible had to become possible, she had found a way. In the unforgiving crucible of combat, she had proven that human ingenuity and determination could overcome any odds. The Steel Angel of Bakhmut had shown the world that sometimes the greatest heroism comes not from following the rules, but from having the courage to break them when lives depend on it. Years later, when military historians asked Sarah Morrison what drove her to attempt such an impossible shot, her answer was always the same. When you're responsible for the lives of your crew and your fellow soldiers, impossible isn't a word you get to use. You find a way, or you die trying. In the end, that was the true measure of a hero, not the impossibility of the task, but the absolute refusal to accept defeat when others are counting on you. Captain Sarah Steele Morrison had embodied that principle in the most spectacular way imaginable, earning her place in military history as the tank commander who taught the world that even the sky wasn't beyond the reach of American armor.